Hi, this is for assignment 6.2 in regards to conflict in groups and the two videos on the TED Talks. The shadow in here makes me look very old. Anyways, so the first video about Alice actually I found very interesting. It spoke of her being one of the youngest physicians that was a female in the 1950s, that she worked throughout many phases of her life. So when she was single, when she was married, when she had children, and even when she was a single parent, she continued to work and worked hard at research and just being cutting edge in being a physician. She studied specifically childhood cancers, and a lot of her success resulted in asking many questions. So after asking many questions and having some conflict with other surgeons and doctors and researchers, she ended up finding through surveys that showed 2 to 1 that mothers who were x-rayed when pregnant, in fact, had children who had cancer. Some of the things that I took away from the talk was to be prepared to change your mind through conflict. So I guess that really means just being open to understanding other people's points of view. So conflict can be sometimes seen as negative, and I think it depends how you approach that conflict, but you can actually learn from it as well. Don't be afraid of conflict and raise concerns if there are concerns. A lot of times people will have concerns and they choose to ignore them, and then ultimately things don't get resolved because they're choosing not to speak about those things that are concerning them. Maybe they're worried about what others will think, or any negative feedback that they might have. The other thing that they pointed out in that talk was to be willing to be in conflict, because it helps to develop skills. So it helps us look at things differently, maybe approach things differently, and ultimately learn skills that we can apply in life. And bringing up a concern, you might discover that you have allies that have the same concerns. So there might be others who are worried about the same things and want it brought up. Maybe they're scared to bring it up too, but you could be surprised by how many have the same opinion. With the marshmallow challenge, that was kind of interesting. From that talk, I mean, I guess I didn't see it so much about conflict as I did about collaboration and what that means. So, through that, he talked about, the group talking about things, kind of jockeying for power at the beginning and doing some planning and organizing. But through his studies, that orienting and planning and building usually ends up in an uh-oh instead of a ta-da. So he spoke about, with kindergartners, how they will build a prototype and they'll refine it and build a prototype and refine it, have discussions, kind of move together as a group through that prototype. So almost starting with the end and moving forward instead of moving forward and then achieving the end. He talked about identifying hidden assumptions throughout the group and sharing that same experience, a common language, and then that prototyping and facilitation. I think that conversation actually could have gone a lot deeper because, he was referencing that marshmallow challenge, and I understand the importance of that challenge and what he learned through that challenge. But that prototype and refining, I think, has a lot more definition behind it than what was shared. I'm going to share a little bit actually from a book that was just given to me recently called Fierce Conversations: Achieving Success in Work and in Life, One Conversation at a Time. It's written by Susan Scott, and it was actually recommended to me because, and I had mentioned this in one of the earlier exercises that we did, but I had a conversation with 2 of my managers. It didn't go great. It got better after we spoke a little bit later on, but during the process, I was kind of hurt and I didn't feel like things went well. Anyways, I found this little bit interesting. Finding out what you know. This is on page 183 of Fierce Conversations. A careful conversation is a failed conversation. When we enter the conversation with a goal of being poised, clever, instructive, we are inhibited and all possibilities of intimacy are held at bay. If we approach a conversation with the assumption that we know where it is going and what we need to say, we assume that logic is running the show. Things are not that simple. A fierce conversation is more original and varied in its choices. The heart, the guardian of intuition, with its unsettling intentions, is the boss. Its commands are ours to obey. At least they're mine to obey. It still comes as a shock to realize that I don't speak about what I know. I speak in order to find out what I know. Often the real trouble is that the conversation hasn't been allowed to find its subject. It isn't yet about what it wants to be about. I want to continue to read this because this is a really good book. But I think it just